pesticides. I was really interested in producing healthy food. So that's my number one reason. The other ones is economics, and I like to show this. I studied economics in school, and this blue line represents the resource supply, the world's supply of oil and copper and all the things that are on the planet. And this red line is the worldwide demand. And as countries like India and China start consuming more and more stuff, this is rising over time, the demand for all the stuff that the planet has. And I think we're at this critical point in this green dot where as we move forward through time, these two are converging. And so what will happen is the demand increases and the resources have peaked, prices will increase. So that's a strong reason for me to study natural farming and being able to grow your own food, because I think we're at that critical point in the planet where resources are going to be more scarce and prices are going to go up. So I'm real blessed. This is an aerial shot of our house. John Caverly's farm is right over here. We're blessed. We have 25 acres. We have a river that supplies the power to our home. I've got chicken coops and greenhouses. We've got some gardens here and some more garden space. I have some fruit trees and some areas for my cows to grow. So we have real deep soil. It's real nice. We're very blessed. And so I converted this from a apple. So some of these slides didn't make it. But really, I'm going to talk about the inputs. And the point, if I have one thing to say tonight, it's get your hands dirty and have fun. Make the inputs. Everybody, a lot of times when we talk to people, they go, oh, it sounds so complicated. It's so hard to do. But my experience is the exact opposite. It's simple, it's cheap, and it's fun. So these are the four things I do. I spray, I put IMOs in my garden beds, I use mulch and compost, and I love the worms in the biochar. So this is my spray unit. Now, you don't need anything as complicated as this, but I use a plastic tank that I bought at the Chem Tanks. I take a Home Depot 5-gallon bucket. I cut one of the buckets in about a third and turned it upside down. And what this does is, I've got a simple fish aquarium aerator. And it takes air and it puts it out at the bottom of this tank. And when the air comes up, it catches that upside down bucket. And instead of the air going around the outside of my bag of IMOs, it actually forces it through the center of this bucket. So this is a simple paint filter that fits in a 5-gallon bucket. You can get it at any paint store. And so I stick my IMOs inside of this paint bag, stick it in the top of the bucket, and then the air comes up, it catches in the middle, and it goes through and aerates your composted tea. So that's one of the techniques I use. I have a little sprayer here. It's battery powered, and I love my worm farms. We have a couple other that we hand built. This is one that my wife bought me for Christmas one year, and we absolutely love it because the juice that comes out of the bottom, we spray on her orchids, and she used to use pesticides and fertilizers. She uses none of that anymore, and her orchids are always in bloom. So I always incorporate a little of this worm juice in our sprays. And this is my chemical shed. This is, where we keep the fermented plant juices and the water-soluble calcium and so forth. And that's it. And, if you compare that one with most typical chemical sheds and the suits you have to wear and stuff, you just become a believer right away in natural farming. And so this is, the simple formula on when to apply the sprays. It's simple, 1 tablespoon for a liter of rainwater, and it's just, if you'll spray every couple of weeks, it works like magic. So the other one is the IMOs, and I like to do it myself. I like the Cho one. So this is me mixing a bag of mill run in our shed. And this picture was taken yesterday. I almost always have a pile going. And I tried to catch a picture here, and it didn't quite come out, but it was filled with steam. This pile is super hot and super moldy. And so I just love IMOs. It's fun to make, and I almost always have a pile going. And this slide, is how to make it, and I think everyone in this room knows how. The only thing I do differently is instead of going out in the jungle and putting the box, which I built one the way it was originally done, I now take some rice and I go out into the jungle or into the bushes, and I grab some leaves at the bottom of a deep litter, and I just sprinkle them across a plastic container of rice. And a week later, I have just a bowl of rice mold, mix it 50-50 with sugar. I've got IMO 2, and then I go ahead and make my IMO 3. I'm a firm believer in the worms. I just, if you had to do nothing else, get yourself a worm farm and spray worm juice. It does amazing things. This is, Josiah will talk tonight, but this was actually the first bed that we did with his biochar. And he might even show you some pictures tonight of the corn. But it was night and day. And this was the very first picture of spreading the biochar. And I haven't done it at on all of our gardens, but the ones that I have done it show amazing results. And so now I'm in the process of learning how to do it myself, so I'm looking forward to his talk. We got an earth machine. They're available at the county recycling centers. We make compost. Basically, you layer greens and browns, and compost is easy to make, and we use it everywhere. So this is typically how I'll do when I built these simple hoop houses out of 1-inch PVC. We built them ourselves, and we're fortunate we have a lot of dirt. So first thing I do is I double dig, go down this far and dig. I like dolomite because it has the calcium and the magnesium, and that's a good thing to have a balance. Our soils out here are very acidic, so by adding a little dolomite to the start, it's a good base, and I never add it after the first time. I have a wood chipper, and I took some sugar cane, and I chipped sugar cane, a pile, and just spread it out over the top. Then I took my IMO 4 and put a thin layer on top of the sugar cane. I happen to have my neighbor has a horse pasture, so I get some free horse manure and put that on top. And then I just covered it up with grass clippings. I like my grass clippings because it's a really good way to suppress weeds, and it also provides a sun cover for your IMOs here. And so 6 weeks later, that's what you get. Just so much zucchini. We had zucchini soup, zucchini breakfast. It was everywhere. So this is the major problem we have out in our area. This is Wainaku grass, and it's just really invasive. So I find myself double digging gardens and trying to pull this grass out. But this is what happens when I'm done. I do the same process I showed in the greenhouse, where I'll take that earth. This is a picture of that earth machine compost just laid out on top. And so that's it. I'm not applying NPK fertilizer. I just get the ground kind of good. And in many cases, this is what I do the first time, and I'll try not to re-till it if I go back in. If I go back in a second or a third time, I just add an IMO, maybe a little manure, and that's it. I don't even till it again, because you can see the soil texture has really changed. This is something we do. There's so many bugs and things that gets young starts out in the field, that in a greenhouse in a controlled setting, raised up on blocks. This is just 2x4 with a chicken wire bottom. It's only about 3.5 inches thick here. Put some newspaper down, throw some soils with some IMOs, and start my seedlings. And we start those. The cycle is this: we plant the seed. By about 3 weeks later, it's ready to transplant. and then we go ahead and start this seedling again. It's a constant rotation, but it's a really good place to start.
Exactly how do you do seeds with the IMO? Just lay it out right on?
Well, actually, I mix it right into the soil. It's so thin. I mean, we're only talking about 3.5 inches of soil to begin with, so I just mix IMO into that whole mix. And I'll actually use a little Pro Mix just because it's easy for me on top to keep that top layer, but sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And it's easy to water. You can control it. It doesn't dry out. It's right there. You can watch it. It's protected from the insects. And so I'm going to talk about our gardens, but this is a picture of our counter on, January 1st, 2011. And that's, all that food's right from our gardens, and I hadn't even planted them yet. Ginger and turmeric is really a good thing to do. It grows really easily. It makes a healthy drink. My wife makes a great, she just takes about this much ginger and turmeric, puts it in a boil. We put it in a gallon container with a little honey, and it makes a fabulous drink, very healthy, tonic, and it beats fine juice. Taro is a good staple. Drake had some good varieties. We just grow it just straight out of that, and we use this as comfrey that we like. It makes great compost, keeps the weeds down, and it's a good companion plant. Purple sweet potatoes, it grows so easy. I heard someone tonight say that it gets a lot of insects. I just haven't found that in our area. I do get insects, but nothing's attacked those potatoes so far. And that's a really good, healthy plant. We do sugar cane. There's some good varieties. I've got some, if somebody's interested and wants to get a few starts. I got it from John Caverly, and about these 4 stalks of sugar cane, they're about 5 feet tall, and we got a sugar cane press, makes about 1.5 gallons of juice. It's just amazing the amount of juice that comes out of sugar cane. But we used to buy apple juice for our smoothies, and now we use the sugar cane. And it makes it, if you've got lime, it's one of the best cocktails you'll ever have. Pineapple we do. I have this picture because, I wanted to show one we like wood chips. Wood chips is a great way to start to keep the weeds down. It also has a lot of IMOs inside. And the other thing, these plants were like sickly for a while, and I started to spray every about 3 weeks with the Cho sprays. And the pineapples just turned night and day, went from kind of sickly sitting there to super healthy and all flowering and fruiting. I have a few fruit trees. I started back in the 70s a nursery, planted a Hawai'i fruit tree nursery, so I could plant anything I wanted, and I planted too much of things that I didn't have. And so now I do bananas, some papayas, avocados, a couple of oranges, and a lime and a lemon. And really that's enough. I love avocados, but the one thing I wanted to point out here is how low and squat this is. When you have a fruit tree, especially an avocado, and you want it low, you want to prune it. Just don't worry about, you can take the top right out. Try to force it into the most right-angled, wide branch that you can. The branches that are narrow V's are weak and will end up splitting. So what you want is the ones that go 90 degrees out to the side. And the tree will eventually grow up and fill out, but it makes it a lot easier to harvest your fruit. So don't be afraid to prune your trees.
When about would you prune an avocado tree like that? We've got avocados, we just removed them all.
When they're this big.
They're little, okay.
Start when they're little. They'll start to branch, and then just keep at it. Every 6 months or so, take the center out of that tree.
So if they're already big, then you're out of the lot.
Force it. Force it wide. I've tried to cut trees dead to the stump, and they'll continue to want to grow. So you really can't kill an avocado tree.
How tall are those?
That last tree is about, that one there is about this high. And it's about 5 years old. And it's a Charwell which tends to grow wide. Some varieties tend to grow really tall. We used to, like a Kahaluu wants to grow straight up. And we planted I used to sell nothing but grafted trees and recommend it, and I still do. But we put in about 8 Charwell seedlings, and they're all different. And out of those 8 trees, 6 of them we really love. And it takes about a seedling about 5 years to fruit, whereas a grafted tree will produce fruit almost the next year. It just needs to get enough size to support the fruit, but it's capable of flowering right away. Yeah.
If you've got a tree that's like 4 or 5 feet tall, is it possible to transplant it?
Yes, but if you do it, you want to cut off most of the foliage. Cut it way, way back. It's the leaves that are sucking the energy out of the plant. And so you want to take 95% of the leaves, maybe even 100% of the leaves off.
Just like down to the base?
Well, I'd cut them to the big branches and cut most of the light leaves off, because that's what's going to suck the water out of the
But
plant.
how do you get the roots? I mean,
You take as much as you can.
just as much as you
Yeah, it's a tough deal.
I have it's about a 12-foot tree, and the branches are going straight up, and they're now hitting the floor, hitting the dirt. Is that all right, or do you need to cut it before you touch the ground?
On an avocado?
Yeah.
I think you're fine. You might try a little support so that the fruit's not on the ground, so the critters don't get it. But I wouldn't be afraid to let it go on the ground. And the other thing I wanted to show, in the old days, I used to herbicide around the ground, and when I stopped doing that and put cardboard and just let the weeds grow and just try to keep it, a little bit controlled, the plants absolutely took off. It was night and day for the trees. So I don't do that anymore. And my son knows I'm German, and I still use herbicide in the borders and on certain places because it's simple for me. But on the fruit trees, I just don't do it anymore. And it's mostly for the plant's health. They just seem to really like the worms and the weeds and all that. They just like it rather than that dry ground. So they actually grow better. Now, I don't know if anybody has cassava. I saw Drake took in a couple tonight, but at the next meetings, if anybody wants us, let us know. It basically grows from this little branch here. It's one of the most widely cultivated starches in the world in the tropics. And all you got to do is stick a branch in the ground, and it comes out with roots, about 10 of them, that are these long tubers. And they provide a lot. They're not really super nutritious, but they've got a lot of starch content. So it's a really good food to have. Sometimes we'll have it boiled. We use it now in our dog food. We make our own dog food, and we use cassava because it's easy to use and it's plentiful and cheap. It makes a great, if you grate it, it makes, you can eat it like hash browns in the morning. And there's just a ton of ways to use cassava. Yeah.
Question, why would you want to eat it? It's not nutritious.
It's just not filled with a lot of vitamins, but you still need the starches. You still need the calorie content. It's not highly nutritious. And this is one of my last slides. There's a Hubble bubble display or poster board on the side, and Mike's Hubble bubble really works and it's really effective. And I built this before the Hubble bubble. So this little critter here, I've got to keep an active program going, and I just take one egg and put it in there, and I catch a mongoose a day. But I built a little inverted rain tank cover. Put it on a post, and it provides a dry place for my chickens. And this is the initial cho feeder here. This top board spins, and the chickens don't fight when they want to go get food, so they're really simple and easy to build. This is his water feeder, which is just a 3-inch PVC pipe, and it's really easy to fill up and keep your water in the chickens. And we built inside here one of the official Cho hen boxes, and it really works great. We love it. Just open this thing is on a double hinge. You reach in, grab a couple, all your eggs in the morning. They're all in one spot, and so I've got about 14 chickens. Kim Chang, if you haven't heard her program on how to raise chickens, it's great. She tells you how to feed them. 30% greens, 30% fruits and chicken scraps. She uses some store-bought grains and about 30%, and then about 10% IMO dirt. IMOs and dirt is what she feeds her chickens. And I'm trying to, and I get really good egg production. What I'm trying to do right now is get rid of that store-bought. I'm still buying grains. And so I got to figure out a way through, and I think soldier fly is the way to go for to get the protein.
Have you made a black soldier fly?
I have, and I've had alternate success. It's worked at times and not others. Have you been more successful?
I was brainstorming how to make one without having to spend too much money.
There's a great video on YouTube, and it's at blacksoldierfly.com, and he explains how to make one out of a 5-gallon bucket.
Well, I saw that, but it was still had to buy too much parts.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I figured out I had these, you know, those tough boxes.
Yeah.
I took that and I had another wooden box. I put it in there at an angle, and then I put the vent holes in, and I put a tube at the upper end, and I put a bucket under it, and that was it.
And are you collecting soldier fly?
Well, I just threw in a bunch of spent grains and manure, and I'm waiting, but I'm gonna put more vent holes on the side, hopefully.
One of the things I found was effective in the beginning was he had the cardboard wrapped at the top where
For the eggs.
for the eggs to lay in,
Right.
and that did work.
Okay.
And so I'm going to replace my cardboard, and I think I'll be back in business.
Okay. I would have to staple it on, I guess.
Yeah, or rubber band works good. Okay, I think I'm almost done here. One last comment. One last comment is, it's really about changing our diet. I'm guilty. I mean, really, very guilty. I like my Oreos, and we love to go to the grocery store and Costco and buy our food, but it's really about changing what we eat. And that's the hardest thing to do, really. And so the reason we want to do that is all this processed stuff ends up in a landfill, in the garbage, Whereas if we can get to 95% growing our own, it doesn't come in a package. It actually ends up in our earth machines and back in our garden. And that's really what this is all about. So that's it. Thanks a lot. Just growing weeds in about a cup of water and blends that. In fact, Dr. Park made a presentation once here on how to make liquid IMOs, and I'm going to throw that into with IMO 2, which is the sugar and the rice mold, and put that in the blender, and with the chlorophyll, and it seems to almost bubble and react, and try to water that into my cane. Because I think that's what's going on. That was my thought process, that the cane, all that sugar on the beds would increase the microbial growth. So that was what I was thinking. And it seems to have worked. I'm not sure. And no science, just one way to do it. Yeah?
Do you have problems with pickleworms and your zucchini?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Pick the flowers off early. And
It'll actually get into the
yeah.
juice, the
Well,
skins.
I found that if I let the flowers, be there for more than 24 hours, the pickle worms come in, sting the zucchini, and the whole plant dies. So what I do is I just go in each morning, and that's one of the little chores that I do, is that I pick off all the flowers, and I almost don't have any problems with that. My biggest problem is powdery mildew and molds. that white fungus that grows. And, I haven't been as diligent as I should be, maybe with that OHN to see if I can battle it. But the philosophy I use now is, one is a healthy plant is great. The IMOs, they grow great, they fruit for a while. But I just plant fewer of them in more places more often. And I just figure that a plant's not going to last very long.
The zucchini, the pickleworm, the garden guy that lives up in Hilo that does the newspaper, he told me that the wings of the moth that delivers the bug is 3/4 of an inch wide.
Uh-huh.
So if you put a netting over it that's a 1/2 inch wide, like the bird netting, then most of them can't get through. And
That
so
might-
you'll still have some, but you'll reduce it a lot by just putting the 1/2 inch bird netting.
That might be a way to keep the moths off.